Good morning, everyone. I see quite a number of people have already joined, and they will be joining some more. But I think it's a good time to start. It's just after 11, and we only have an hour, and we don't want to waste our time. So first of all, good morning, friends and colleagues, and big welcome to all of you to this webinar, which is going to be focusing on the newest buzzword in universities and workplaces, namely employability, and what that possibly might mean for us. I'm very excited about this conversation, and I can see from the number of people who registered and who have joined that they are also excited about it and curious certainly about this term of employability and how it applies to our everyday lives. But before we start, I have sad news to share, and we wish to offer our deepest sympathies to Malcolm Darwin, who has just suffered the loss of his brother due to COVID. So our condolences to him and his family. So he won't be joining us this morning, unfortunately, but he did promise that he will join us for a future webinar, and we're looking forward to that. In his place, we have a bright young man who is a rising star in the field of human resources, Mr. Kyle Chetty. And we were just talking before the webinar started, and he was starting to tell us about his company and how the whole company is shifting towards AI and machine learning and all of those exciting things, which I think is so relevant to the conversation that we're going to be having this morning. But he's not only an alumnus of Regent and Mancosa, he also has 10 years of experience in the field of HR and talent management in various sectors. He is certainly fully aware of the employability skills that we will be discussing this morning. And so we are very keen to hear his views on the matter. Our other speaker is Dr. Ridwan Aswat. He's the head of academic admin at REGENT Business School, and has been for many, many years. He is also currently responsible for the HR function at REGENT, but more importantly, is instrumental in helping to develop those all-important employability skills, particularly through the iLead Lab. He will be telling you much more about that in a short while. But before we start, and I see we have quite a nice group of people who've joined us, so I hope all of you will be able to benefit from this. I'm happy to share with you that we have 10 short courses to give away as spot prizes. Winners will be randomly selected and informed after the webinar, and the course is a 3-day design thinking and innovation adventure. So after the webinar, we will be randomly selecting 10 people from a hat, and we will inform you that you have won the course. So looking forward to that. So for this morning, the program is as follows. I will start by setting the scene so that we're all on the same page. I think there are very many different interpretations of employability, and we need to come to a common understanding if we want to move forward on employability skills. Secondly, I will ask Dr. Aswat to speak with us. He will also share a set of slides, and he will be giving us information about the iLead Lab as well. And then finally, Mr. Chetty, who will share with us his thoughts and experiences in the field and the needs for employability skills. All right, thank you. So I will then share my screen. There you are. Tell me, somebody just tell me whether they can see it?
Yes, we can, Dr. Rao.
Thank you. Okay. So I've got a few slides that just sort of gives us the background around employability and employability skills. It's called Employability in the 21st Century. And I think the first one always makes me smile is this notion of the machines are coming to take our jobs. Now, apparently, this was an expression or a term that was used, or a fear that was shared with people even in the first industrial revolution. Machines are coming to take our jobs, and indeed they did. And so the reality is that we know that robots are taking over thousands of routine tasks, and will eliminate many low-skills jobs in advanced economies and developing countries. At the same time, though, I think which is important to remember is that technology is also creating opportunities, which paves the way for new jobs, increasing productivity, improving delivery of public services, and so on. And isn't that something we can all do with? And then when we consider the scope of challenge to prepare for the future of work, I think that this is key. And many people speak about this a lot, that for those children who are currently in primary school, they will probably work in jobs that don't yet exist, which I think is quite a sobering thought, if you ask me. So that shows you how fast, how rapidly things are going to be changing over the next few years, and are already changing exponentially. So therefore, we seem to have a whole set of new challenges. And what will the new worker then look like? And I think this is now where we start talking about those issues around employability. You know, and these challenges don't have a simple solution. But I think the one thing that we all agree is that the challenges need a combination of technological know-how, problem solving, critical thinking, as well as soft skills. So people with these kinds of skills are going to be people who would be appropriate and appropriately skilled for the future. But I think at the same time, we have to ask, particularly in the context of COVID, but also post-COVID, what is the future workplace going to look like? I don't know how many of you are still currently working from home, or how many of you, for example, have joined us from very remote areas, which is not your traditional office. I know myself, in particular, today, I'm working from home, and can continue to do so for an extended period of time. And so the nature of our workplace, the actual physical space, is certainly going to change, but also the nature of the work is going to change. And you must ask, what does this mean for all those billions of people who are in the informal sector? But that as an aside. So what does the future workplace look like, and what do future workers look like? And so they talk about the future workers would be workers in the gig economy. And the gig economy means that they won't have a single job of a 30-year-long. So for those of you, for example, Dr. Aswat, I don't want to say anything, but for those of you who've been furniture in the company, you're certainly not part of the gig economy. There's no single lifelong job anymore. And I don't think young people want to work that way anymore. They want to be able to have a side hustle if they want one, and their income will come from multiple income streams. So there's no single lifelong job, and you can see there how technology influences the workforce of tomorrow. So as we know, manufacturing jobs are probably going to be the first to be lost to automation. And that has serious implications for us as an economy, because the developing world is particularly trying to industrialize, while the developed world is trying to de-industrialize. In other words, they're moving their manufacturing jobs to the developing world, where it's cheaper to do. And what does it actually mean for us if all of those manufacturing jobs are taken over by machines? And what does it mean for our economies? So I think what is important is that the future change or technology changes the demand for skills. So what kinds of skills do we need? Okay, and I think this is interesting, that there's a shift away from routine jobs to non-routine jobs, which is high cognitive and social behavioral skills required. In other words, a shift away from from mechanical stuff that can be done by a machine to kind of the problem solving, kind of critical thinking, kind of creativity that we need in order to still maintain the competitive edge. I won't go into all of that, but the future workplace will be a combination, certainly as I've indicated, as a combination of full-time work, as also work on platforms, projects, gigs, and even tours of duty, according to NETLAC. So finally, these are some of the employability skills that have been touted as the most important in modern workplaces. And I think what is interesting and why I've highlighted those two there, what is interesting is that the actual technical skills or the computer skills or the content related skills that we tend to focus on in our current curricula in higher education. Those come in at number 10 and maybe number 12, and computer skills is not even necessarily a curriculum matter, it's maybe an additional matter. But let's say, for example, if you learn to be an accountant, that would be counting as a technical skill, and that comes in at number 10. All the others actually that come before it are things like leadership, working in a team, communication, problem solving, communication, again, work ethic, which is interesting, initiative, analytical skills, and so on. So the actual technical content skills that we tend to focus on in current curricula in higher education, it actually comes much later. That of course they're necessary, and all of these things are necessary, but it's not only that is necessary. And then if you look at some of the other things, interpersonal skills, organizational skills, friendliness, strategic planning, creativity, tactfulness, and then even entrepreneurial skills, which I think is also increasingly moving to the front of this list. So I'm going to stop there for now and just check whether there are, I see there are already questions in the chat. Are there any particular question that somebody wants us to answer before we get going? And I give Dr. Aswat an opportunity. So what skill do you think you need to develop the most? Somebody asked. Communication, I would say communication, empathy. Somebody wants to venture a response. What skill is the most important? Adaptability, Gerard says. Computer skills, certainly. Flexibility. Is age discrimination a reality? I think it is, but it shouldn't be. Communication skill, leadership. Yes, thanks. I think we all agree that those are the kinds of skills that are actually going to stand you in good stead. Tactfulness, somebody says, strategic skills, technology, creative thinking. Okay, wonderful. Dr. Aswat, the floor is ripe and ready for you. So I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Blom, and thanks for that introduction. I think it's quite valuable and it's very insightful in terms of what's happening at the moment, right? I see there's lots of questions, so all the participants out there, please keep sending your questions in. We're happy to engage with them. But just to say thank you again, I think you guys out there are making it happen for us today and being part of this, and we're glad to have you on board. So my job is very, how can I say, simple, in that I'm going to share a whole lot of slides with you. Just, I think if you guys just let me know if you can see this. Can you guys see it? Anybody? Everybody can see it?
Yes, yes, we can.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to share some thoughts I have about employability and giving you some sense of some of the trends and what's going on. But I'd like to start off by actually picking up the point about, you know, the age discrimination. It's very interesting. I came across Actually, it was a post on an HR platform. And one of the HR practitioners was very intrigued when he says that he was challenged in terms of employing people, and he employed a 50-year-old. And he says it was the best decision he ever made because although he was ridiculed for it and he was challenged for it and it was difficult, but he found that there was a space for the 50-year-old still in the market who came in with a lot of the skills that needed to be honed with a younger generation of employees, right? So I think there's still space for if I may call them, the age discriminated kind of people out there. So I don't think we should worry. I think the robots are not going to take that away. I think the whole issue of empathy, the issue of being, thinking critically, problem solving, I think those are the kind of things that will continue happening. And it only comes with experience and it comes with exposure. So let me start off by saying that, just a few thoughts that are, in terms of what's currently happening. I mean, you look at it, almost every person around the globe has been affected by the COVID, and even, whatever it is, learning, teaching, your own work has been affected in some way or the other. And we had to adapt, or rather the world has adapted so quickly to these disruptions, right? And it has made it such an exciting place at this point in time that there's almost no rules as to what we could do in this new age or this new world of work. And I just want to share some thoughts. My son at the moment, he's studying he's finally, he's in his final year. But the things that interest me more, or rather when I observe this, I come obviously from a generation where, you had to sit at the desk, you get all your books out, and that's where you sat and you did your thing, and then you left and that's how you studied. Suddenly I find myself with this child who is studying, and suddenly he's on the bed with his laptop, he's got his cell phone plugged in, he's got his headphones on, and he seems to be doing something, but there's no book in his hand. And if it was in my day, you would have got one clap over the back of your head to say, where's the book? Why is there no book in your hand? And this is how he's learning. And I say to myself, if that's the way that we're going, and that's the way the world is going, and he's going to be the new employee, how do we deal with this? And how do we deal with this as a business school in terms of equipping the future leaders? There's constant flux of information. There's a whole lot of things that are going on. And I think Dr. Blom spoke about it. There's no lifelong job anymore. You're going to find people are going to be hopping between jobs. They're going to pay for their expertise. They just want to come there, deliver, and off they go. And I want to share another quick story with you. Actually, this happened yesterday. And it was with an accounting firm called, it was one of the big 4 accounting firms that we were dealing with on an issue, right? And it had to deal with particularly about an HR issue that we are working on, and we're trying to look at some systems and the likes. And part of the discussion was, there were 2 people on the call. Ladies and gentlemen, and all of the participants, it was amazing for me that both the people representing the company we're speaking to were not HR people. They were engineers. One was a mechanical engineer and one was an electrical engineer or something. And I was like, guys, like, what are you doing? He says, no, we're in the consulting world. And therefore, the skills that we've come with from an engineering background helps this organization to develop in that way. And they're enjoying it. But I said, you've got what we call in-demand skills, engineers, but they are doing consulting work. And that was so enlightening for me, because I was saying, surely there is an opportunity for this, in terms of what we're doing. The other side, the other last 2 points on the slide, which are very, very interesting, is that we are getting the millennials who are now coming into the workforce. And those who are the younger generation in terms of HR and managers and the likes, and the millennials are now going to be managers to the Generation Zs or Zoomers. Imagine what's going to happen. What's happening currently in the world of work, where the millennials were on their own mission, as compared to the baby boomers and the generation Ys. And now you got the generation Zs who are totally in another space. What happens to the world of work? And those are so exciting things. Those are really stuff that we will, it just makes the world so exciting. The last point here is, I mean, almost every person you speak to today, and I had the opportunity today to chat to two of our IT guys that walked into my office this morning. And the conversation was about work. And I said to them, so what's your side hustle? You won't believe it that they both are talking about teaching English in a foreign language via online platforms. And I said to myself, this is amazing that people are always talking about the side hustle where they can put their skills to use and the likes. But that was a bit of dreaming. So let's get back to some reality, guys. What you see on the slide now is the reality that we in South Africa face. As we speak, this is the latest stats that are out there. 32.6% of people in South Africa are unemployed. The extended definition brings our percentage to 43.2% of people in South Africa who are unemployed. Again, and I think the highlight here is the quarterly labor force studies, it's the lowest, or rather the highest it's been since 2008. Guys, there's 160 of us on this call today. We can make a difference in this. We can make a difference in what's going on with this unemployment. What do we do about this unemployment? What are we going to do? This is people who are real, guys. This is the reality check. Look at the graph. 32.6% of people in this country are unemployed. Let's compare this. Let's look at other countries, the OECD countries, Japan. Look at their percentages, 4%, 8%, 10%, 14%. What are they doing? What is going on in those markets? How are they able to have this employment stemmed? And what are they creating that's encouraging employment in those countries? So guys, this is some of the sobering facts that we find ourselves with in the world of today. Unemployment, poverty, low skill, but yet we are moving at a fast pace into the industrial revolution, the fourth, and whatever is coming back. South Africa I think we are in an interesting space. On the one hand, we are moving, light years ahead in terms of technology, and then you've got on the other side the extremes of poverty, unemployment, and this is such an exciting place for one to be in, to say, what can we do? What initiatives can we do within our companies and the likes? So here's the questions. So what do we do? What do we do? How are we going to do this thing? What are we going to do? And I think there's a few points here. I mean, we all speak about it, but this has become a reality. Reskilling the workforce. If you look at the banks today, you look at some of the financial institutions, a lot of so-called, jobs that were done very manually, like tellers and support, is now going away because a lot of it is now apps, and you do online banking and the likes. So even just the other day, we were chatting about the banks, and one of the interesting things was that the banks no more keep as much cash as they used to do before. If you want a certain amount of cash, you have to request it because they just don't keep it anymore. So that has changed the dynamic totally. So what do we do with these people? Or what do we do with people that have certain skills? How do we reskill them? Then it's also the issue of upskilling, getting them better equipped, right? But create programs to fill the in-demand programs. What is it that the world wants? What is it that we should be focusing on, right? The other aspect is entrepreneurship. We speak about it every day, the side hustle, the small thing on the side. Let me start a business. I mean, today with just simple technologies, you can start up an Instagram page, a Facebook page, a website within a matter of a few hours, and you can sell any amount of products that you can think about, and people will buy. There is that spirit of buying, right? The last one, and I think South Africa has this problem, is the issue of a mindset change. We're constantly waiting for somebody to hand something out through to us as South Africans. We have this entitlement kind of philosophy that has embedded itself within our communities. And we need to break out of that. We need to say we can do it ourselves. And that's why let's look at those countries. Let's look at your Japans. Let's look at your at the Middle East, at the East, and the countries where entrepreneurship is very rife. How do we make that mindset change in South Africa? So again, here's also some future trends, and this is what the world look like. And all the participants, we are going to get into some of the employability issues, but it's important to have this kind of understanding as to what's happening out there. Let's start off with a few points. 8 to 10 jobs by the age of 38. That's what the statistics say to us, and that's what the research says to us, that people will change jobs 8 to 10 times by the age of 38. Imagine that. It never happened before. We're seeing an abundance of freelancers. Everybody is doing something. They're doing something at home. They're doing something on the part-time. They're plugging in a gap. And jobs will be different. You'll study for one thing, but once what you've completed studied, you'll be doing something totally opposite to the other side. I think the next two points are very interesting. 85% of the jobs that today's learners will be doing in 2030 haven't yet been invented. I think Dr. Blom spoke about it. And 65% of grade school learners who started in 1999 will be in jobs that haven't even been created. So that's the trends that are going on. And the further trend is that people are now, the trend is in the moment learning. What do I need to learn now that I can implement immediately? People or participants, the community, the world is going into the whole issue of instant gratification, if I may call it, where we want to do it now, we want to learn it now, and we want to implement. And this is going to transform more than 1 billion jobs in the world. Can we just think about that? It's going to transform 1 billion jobs in the world. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling, ladies and gentlemen. So, what is the meaning of employability, and how do we address this issue of employability? And there's a few things that I want to highlight in terms of the entire definition. Is the issue of competencies, the issue of skills, and the issue of personal attributes. I think those are the critical issues when you talk about employability. It's how do we create that? How do we make that? How do we instill that to make the workforce, as part of our community as we move on? Let's talk about this. This slide was very interesting for me when I looked at it. Can you imagine the new way of working and even learning? Can you imagine this? And I don't think it's very far-fetched. It's a matter of time before it comes, it's already here. But I think it's a matter of time before it gets even more embedded. Imagine you wake up in the morning. I mean, we're doing it currently. We don't leave our homes. We're at home. We go to our desks there. And the possibility of us having an AR or augmented reality headset where we plug it onto our heads and we suddenly do a lot of technical operations without physically leaving our space. It's happening. It's almost like what they call a ride and share, like an Uber service. So I do my bit today or for the next 2 hours, somebody else jumps on, they put their headset on and they continue whatever we're doing. And that's where the world is going. You look at it, the amount of apps and services that are designed for learning today and just education. Take any field. There's so much that you can learn about this type of things. And I'm going to share a bit of a joke with you guys. I'm trying to lose a bit of weight, Dr. Blom. So I've been trying this whole gym thing out. Huh? So my wife was on my case the other day and she said to me, why don't you just go to YouTube, go to Instagram, Google this thing, and you'll find like tons of stuff that you can do, without having to ask any person for that or even a trainer. I still come from the old school. I still want to print things out. I still want to see it physically in my hand. But when I began to delve a little bit more into this thing, I realized, hold on, I can do it without having to speak to anybody at my pace, at my convenience, when I want it. And that for me began a new journey into other learnings as well. Guys, there's one thing that if you have the time, when you have a look at it, there's a new concept, or rather a new thing called a weight suite that MIT has come about. If you look at it, it's called weight learning. Now, if you look at the word weight meaning as in, you're waiting in a queue, or you're waiting for something happening, or you're waiting for something. So what MIT has come about with was saying, okay, let's start off with languages. So they've created this app. It's called the Weight Suite, where all you do is you download this and you have it on your computer or on your phone. And this, if for example, you're on WhatsApp and you are waiting for a message to download, or you're waiting for something, the program automatically knows that you are waiting and begins to prompt you to learn a new language. So at the moment, they've got Spanish and Italian. So you want to learn some words. What it does is it prompts you to learn a new word. And at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a new French word coming, or a Spanish word, and you have to translate it. So this is while you're waiting. If you look at what they've done is also, when you're looking at downloading your mail from Gmail or whatever platform you're using, they've managed to find a way in which they're able to see that you are waiting it for a download. While you're waiting for that, it prompts you to learn. Now imagine what that could do for other aspects of our businesses. Imagine while the guy is waiting to download something at his desk, it prompts him to learn something, or prompts him to learn a new feature, or prompts him to learn a new practice or a new policy. I mean, those are the kind of things that are exciting as we move along. So here's another very interesting thing about employability. 90% by the year 2030, we'll be spending 90% of our time solving problems. We won't be making physically things. We'll be solving problems. What's the problem for climate change? What is the problem of carbon emissions? What's the problem of for traffic control? Those are the kind of things I think are going to happen, or rather that's what the statistics say, and this is what's going to happen. 40% more time each week using critical thinking skills. Guys, think about it. 40% of your time is now going to be about thinking, using the gray matter, using our abilities to think and find problems. Now, when we have HR managers and executives who are suddenly seeing employees just sitting and thinking, they're going to say, guys, you're not working, but that's the real work. They're thinking, they're analyzing. Guys, process this for a minute. Problem solving. You think about your typical work day. How much of it is about problems, solving issues? Every day we're just solving issues, all right? But these are the kind of things that are going to happen by 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, we talked about the employability skills, and this is just one depiction of what an employability skills would look like. Communication, teamwork, problem solving, initiative and enterprise, planning, organizing, self-management, learning, technology. How many times, I mean, just with my kids and the people that I know, communication is such a problem. The guys sit next to each other, but they're on their phones all the time. They can't talk to each other. They don't know what to say. They meet in a social gathering and they're all looking at each other sometimes a bit oddly because they have very little to talk about. But if you give them a phone, they can talk about everything and anything that you want. We need to develop that skill of communication. Teamwork, I think such an important skill to have, that you're not going to be able to work in isolation. We are going to need to work in teamwork. Guys, the problem solving we spoke about, technology. If we are not up to date with technology and have our hands on the latest, I think we're going to be a little bit of a disadvantage as we move along. So I think these slides can be shared with you, so no need to panic. We can always get them through to you, so you can always read them at your leisure as well. Let's talk about the side hustle. And this is talking about employability, guys. How do we stem the unemployment we find in this country and around the world? Just look at the news today. Go anywhere. Go look at any news bulletin. Unemployment, strikes, everything you can think of is happening around the world. And what's happening is we need to begin to create that mindset to say you can be employable without having to go to a university or to any other institution where you have to spend inordinate amount of time, or 1 year or 3 years or 5 years, to understand a particular subject. Here's some passive income. How many of you are already doing some of these things? And then you can answer it yourself, and maybe you can send some of the comments. Investing in stock and shares. Look at what's happening with Bitcoin, guys. It's sitting at a ridiculous, what's it, $60,000, $70,000 or whatever it is now. At one stage, it was about 2,000, 1,000 at one stage. Look at just sitting passively, it can do what it can do for you. Starting a YouTube channel. There's tons of time. You know, I know of a group of friends who are ardent fishermen, right? And they've started their own YouTube channel, Instagram channel, and they've got major sponsors today who support them on fishing. So they just come back now from the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal, where they went fishing in the place called Port St. John's, and they've been getting tons of likes, subscriptions. You know, people are beginning to follow them, and they're generating their own income out of that. Starting a podcast, becoming an affiliate marketer, starting a business and automating, starting a paid community, selling a course, website development. How many people today can develop a website in a matter of few hours and have it launched? What can that do for all of those small businesses out there? So guys, these are some of the passive income streams that we talk about. I'd like to share this video, particularly I'm coming towards the end of my presentation. So I want to share this. This was by the World Economic Forum, talking about reskilling, upskilling, and they're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. So I hope you can see it and you can listen in. I'm just going to put it on now.
There's no sound.
So colleagues, maybe I think maybe you didn't get it, right? In terms of the sound, apologies if you haven't heard it, but the critical factors here that was presented was the issue of upskilling, reskilling, getting us up to date, or rather with what current trends are going. And if the entire world is talking about, the World Economic Forum is talking about it, we as Regent Business School have endeavored in that way, in our own small way, and we'll talk about it in the next few slides that we're talking about. So part of it, so what's the future look like? What are the future professions that we should be guiding ourselves, maybe our own kids, maybe even our own companies, to say, guys, these are the kind of things that we should be exploring. And this is done by LinkedIn, and they've managed to pull out of this data or this research from their job searches and the likes. So here's what they're saying it looks like in the next few years, that type of professions we need to focus on. Data and AI, we know data is money. Data means information. Data means a new business model altogether. AI, engineering and cloud computing, everything today is moving into that field, all right, into that space. Do we have enough engineers to do this? Do we have enough cloud computing specialists to do this? And those are the kind of things we need now to look, we need to talk about. Let's talk about the softer skills, people and culture. And we spoke about it, about employability skills. We need to have those skills, people skills, problem-solving skills, culture skills, being attuned to cultural diversity. And those are the kind of things that will enhance any organization that we can do. Product development. You know, when I put up the slide earlier, if we're spending 90% of our time solving problems, product development is the space. What is the problem? How can we develop a product that will solve a problem? What is it that we want to do? What should we do? How should we do it? And those are the kind of things that are going to happen in the future. Sales, market, and content development. Think about it, guys. Every one of us today is a super photographer, everyone. And we all claim to be that, you know. We want to take this angle of the selfie, and this is how we're going to post, and whatever it is. But there's a huge market for content development and photographers that need to take high resolution pics, high resolution photography, images that people will want to buy. How many of us, when you look at Instagram, we look at pics and we look at what a product is offered, and we make a decision based on that to buy? How do we do that, guys? And these are the type of things that we need to train on: sales, marketing, content development. Let's look at COVID. What has COVID done? COVID has just speeded up what they call the K economy, or the healthcare economy. Everybody is dependent on some medical assistance somewhere along the line. And we need to look into that. The green economy, I think we've spoken so much about it. The world knows about it. What are we going to do about it? What are the solutions? Our oceans are being destroyed. Our forests are being destroyed. You look at what's happening in just in our oceans. Look at what happened in Durban just a few days ago, where there was entire spill of affluent and waste into the bay, and that goes directly into our oceans, and we eat that fish. What happens to us in terms of just our own well-being and our health? How do we prevent that? What do we do? What are the solutions? And those are the kind of professions, I think, these are the professions that are going to happen in the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my last slide, and we're saying, so what, now that you've got all of this and we've told you all of this, so what is Regent really doing about all of this? And I think the critical factors here is, number one, is that we are preparing the students for our fourth industrial revolution via what we call the iLead lab, or our technology labs. Currently, we have 5 in the country, 2 in Gauteng, 1 in Pretoria, 1 in Joburg, there's 2 in Durban, and there's 1 in Cape Town. And through those iLead labs, we're beginning to infuse what we call the traditional 3 R's, right? And we're bringing in the critical thinking, the creativity, the collaboration, the communication. And we are teaching a lot of in-demand skills, right? And this provides a great opportunity for all our participants today to engage with us. And I'll give you a practical example of what we're doing in the iLead lab. We start off with basic knowledge of robotics and coding, enough to give you an appetite. We also make it easy with open source software. So you don't have to invest a lot of money in this. But robotics, coding, we get into 3D printing, we're getting into drone technology, we're getting into some AI, we're getting into some other creative space. For example, we've just invested in what we call sublimation printing. So could that be the new business? Can I start a new side hustle with an investment of about 60,000 Rand, and I have it in my garage, I can make a few t-shirts, and I can make a few mugs, and I can do this, and I can do that while I'm continuing what I'm doing. And the ultimate idea is to create this new breed of entrepreneurs and stem the unemployment. We've taken the step further, and we've started. It's actually a pilot that we've started where we've taken our BCom degree and integrated technology and 4IR skills within the curriculum, right? And it's what we're seeing is such a huge uptake of our students wanting to learn these skills beyond just for their own being for the institution. So I'll give you a practical example of what I mean by that. We had a group of students who are part of our BCom class, and the guys came up with an idea on how to make some signage, right? Using what we call a laser cutter and using MDF, which is a type of wood. And they went around selling these concepts to some of the organizations that they know. And ultimately, one of the local gyms bought it. And today, those guys have sold that sign, which cost literally, 20 or 50 rands, and they sold it for 500 rands. These are our students, guys. These are the Regent students of the future. And on my concluding note, guys, there's a huge, huge opportunity out there. Grab it. Let us partner with you. Let us work with you. We don't have all the answers. As we said, the world is changing so rapidly. But let's find a way in which the iLead Lab can provide that opportunity for you. And we love to engage with you and the participants as we develop on this road of technology and getting to the 2030, where we can sit back and say, we've made a difference in the world, we've stemmed some unemployment, we've created some entrepreneurs, and we've done something to leave a legacy behind for the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. And thank you for your patience in listening to me. And we love to engage further with you guys. Thank you, Dr. Blom. I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aswat. If you can just unshare. Yes, thank you. Thanks. Thanks very much. I think that was excellent. And there are lots of requests for your presentation. And of course, as I've indicated in the chat, as well as the Q&A, that we will be sharing that with you afterwards. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce or reintroduce Kyle Chetty. I'm not quite sure what he's going to talk to you about, but I'm hoping he is going to share with you some of his own experiences that he's recently been talking to myself and Dr. Aswat about, particularly about the kind of shift in his own organization, which is really fascinating. But nevertheless, I won't preempt him. He certainly comes from an area where he is able to actually draw on the experience and the expertise of the field. So I am going to hand over to Kyle. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Dr. Bloom. Thank you, Dr. Aswat. I think you guys touched on a lot of important aspects that we look at. So I don't want to remix a lot of what you said, but I think the important part around this is actually around, this employability. And there's actually two aspects that we look at. I work in HR, so we understand the graduates that's coming into the market. So that's one point of this employability that we're talking about, is really how do we get these young people, to actually gain employment. And the other part of this is how do we actually keep them employed? All right, so how do we actually allow this employability to continue while they're within the organization? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be employed outside of the organizations, but how do we keep them employed inside? What are some of the skills? What are some of the things that we can do in terms of fulfilling this work, as we call it? And I think Dr. Bloom made mention of this now, is, gone are the days, where we're giving long service awards. There's no gold watch anymore that we're giving to you for long service. We're seeing a trend in the market where people are holding jobs between 2 to 3 years and they're moving on to something else. And what is this something else? We're looking at the trends of what are they looking at? What do they want from organizations now? There's this buzzword around culture and how we impact culture, but that's exactly it. It's how do we employ people that can actually add to our culture. So there's one part about it where the trend was, how do we employ people that fits into our culture? Now we're seeing trends of how do people actually add to cultures in organizations? What are some of the things that they're contributing to this? If we're looking at it from employability, from an employer perspective, and things that what we are looking at, what are we looking for when we're getting thousands of CVs? I mean, Dr. Aswat mentioned, I think there's 43% unemployment rate. So the market of is limited in terms of the skills that we have, but the people that are coming in. And there's a thing called ATS, applicant tracking system. And we see that how this has actually changed the way we are recruiting. Okay. And I think there was a few people that mentioned in the chat, they're sending CVs and so forth. What we're seeing is gone are the days where you have one CV template that we just distribute. Now it's about really looking at the job advert, looking at those skills, those qualities, those qualifications, all of those things that the job advert has, and customizing your CV for that specific position. Because there's no longer a human sitting there screening the CV. We've got technology which is so advanced that we're using this ATS system that is actually screening the CV for us. So we use it in our organization where before the CV actually reaches my recruitment manager's desk or my desk, it is gone through this process of ATS where technology is looking at the CV, it's identifying some of these words and skills that the person has put on the CV that matches to the job. Okay, so that is why sometimes you'll see we're sending out all of these applications, but we're not getting any feedback. And one of the reasons for that is because a lot of companies are investing in this ATS system because it's sort of more time efficient. So we don't need people spending time doing this. The system does it for us. Another thing that we're looking at is, you know, because of this influx of the market, of unemployment in the market, we're seeing that candidates that are not meeting the requirements or not having the required skill just applying for jobs, and we call them serial applicants. And the reason why we say that is because they are just applying for anything and everything because they need that break. They need someone to give them that opportunity. However, when we're looking at some of these skills, if we want to call it, I think Dr. Asfar mentioned it. It's the hard and the soft skills that we're looking at, and some of these skills, so soft skills is basically some of the things that come through practical application. It's those social skills. Then we've got the hard skills, which is those technical skills that we need. And funny enough, while I was preparing for this, we were looking at it. We understand that technology is here. It's changing the way we work. It's changing our world, and we understand that. And I think the important part is how do we use these skills to match what is changing? Now, if we look at the top 10 skills for 2025, they were analytical thinking and innovation, active learning, complex problem solving, creativity, originality, leadership, and social influence. And it goes on to technological design, resilience, stress tolerance, flexibility. So we're seeing a big shift in the market in terms of the skills that we need now for the future. So while technology played a big part of this, in terms of redefining some of the processes and the automation that we're busy with, we still need people with some of these soft skills. We still want to lead with empathy. When COVID hit us and we were doing some webinars and series and we spoke about it, what is the role of the CEO? It's no longer the chief executive officer. It's now the chief empathy officer. How do we lead with empathy? How do we bring that into the workplace? And the one element I want to also talk about is what is this marketable skills that we're talking about? Okay. And marketable skills are really those that are the abilities that are in demand in the job market at the moment. And we use this sort of marketable skills. And yes, they are going to change and evolve, and we understand that. But it's about using this to actually step into that job market or that job search cycle. But it's also about having that competitive edge, having sort of that, what sets me apart? You know, um, if we look at the trend, and Regent can testify to this, if we look at the people that is entering the sort of higher education workplace and workspace now than they did in the last 5-10 years, we're seeing more graduates understand the need for having these sort of qualifications to enter the market. So what is going to set you apart from the other 150 people that graduated with you? What are some of those skills? Now, employability is not just, how do I enter the market? What skills do I have? But it's also around what is my emotional intelligence? What is some of the experience that I have? And it's not just work experience. I look for life experience. One of the big questions that I ask when I do interviews is, how do you learn? And the reason why I ask for that question, because people learn in different ways. And it's up to the organizations to fulfill these sorts of things. So people read or learn by reading books. Some people learn on the job. Some people learn by upskilling, reskilling, and those sorts of things. So it's important that we sort of engineer all of these aspects of understanding, yes, technology is here, but how do we work through this? I work in a company where we were in the automotive, or we're still in the automotive industry, we're in the automotive sector, but some of the shifts that we needed to make to stay upfront, to be in that competitive edge, is through AI. It's using information, it's about using data and saying, how do we improve this? How do we make it more efficient? I'll give you an example. Discovery has this little sort of Discovery Drive chip that you put in your car, and it actually, if you insured with Discovery, you have to have it, which is great. But the important part is that is tracking your behavior. That is tracking around how you drive, how fast are you braking, are you going into sort of those dangerous areas or high risk crime areas, your driving habits, and that then determines your premium that you're going to pay. So those are some of the things that we need to start looking at when we looking at what skills do I need for the future. It's around using technology, using data, and saying, how can I improve this? What is some of the problem solvings that that Dr. Asfad mentioned that can re-engineer the way we do things in the organization? And I can tell you, if I look at the organization that I'm in now, and in the next 4 years, we're no longer going to be in probably the automotive sector. We're probably going to be now in the technological robotics sort of environment, because that's where we headed. We've seen and we've developed these things. So I hope that gives you some sort of insight, and I see time is of the essence, but that is sort of some of the things that we are looking at, in terms of what are some of the skills that we are looking for coming into the market? And you as an employee, what can you do? So stop using those Google CVs, if I may call it that. Use CVs that speak to you and that speak to the job. So we're able to actually, score those positions. So I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you very much, Carl. So your CV is your marketing tool. Absolutely. Thank you very much. We've had such interesting conversations and questions in the chat, and there is one that I want to pose to you. It's just too good to leave, Kyle, and that's the one about the machine who now sifting the CVs. How's that for taking away jobs by being automated? So do you want to comment on that?
Sure, I think,
yeah.
I think it's important to remember that, technology is here, and it's shifting the way we work, and it's shifting the HR space a lot. I mean, we're using it now with data, things around, we're looking at some of the things around how employees or the sites they're visiting and so forth, and we are rewarding them on that. And we didn't know that a lot of our people actually like Take-A-Lot. So what are we doing? We're using rewards and recognitions by giving them Take-A-Lot vouchers. But coming back to the point of ATS and how it actually helps. So one, it helps us in HR, because that means that I don't have to sift through 100 CVs that go through this process. But I was in that point as well, where I was sending out CVs at one point a good few years ago, before I got my job now. And I looked at this and I'm like, why am I not getting called back? Why is not even a recruiter picking up the phone and asking me about my skills? I know I'm good. But then I started looking at and researching about this ATS. And then I started seeing how your CV needs to match the job, because there's no human there anymore. There's no emotions that is giving you that opportunity. It's technology. So it's so important to keep your CV condensed, but at the same time, make sure it's customized to the job. So that sort of one size CV fits all doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I hear you. So thank you very much for that, Carl. I see that there are questions about CV writing in the chat. We had a lovely CV writing webinar a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure that recording can be shared with you. If just go to connect@regent.ac.za and just request the webinar link that related to the CVs, okay, and the CV writing and so on. All right, people, I'm afraid we are already over time, but before we say goodbye, I want to really invite you to our next week's webinar, which is going to be even more exciting, if it can possibly be, but certainly it's on the same day as World SME Day. So for those of you who are interested in entrepreneurship and small, medium enterprises and that type of thing, it's a celebration of SME Day, World SME Day. And it's entitled SMEs as a Catalyst for Change. There you are. SMEs as a catalyst for change. And I think, we so often hear about how small businesses is going to be the mainstay of the economy, and yet we're so struggling to actually get that going. But nevertheless, please keep your eyes and ears peeled for information about that webinar, because we're going to have an illustrious line up on that day, including our Managing Director, Professor Ahmed Sheikh, Bulelane Balabala, founder of the Township Entrepreneurship Alliance, and Kelebogile Mwaketsi, the author of Money Bucket Holes Explained. That sounds very interesting. And then Mark Frankel, the CEO of Black Umbrella, which is a entrepreneurship hub, what do you call it? Incubation hub, entrepreneurship incubation hub, Black Umbrella. And so unfortunately, yeah, you can see the link in the chat. So if you want to go there and register for next week's webinar, that's unfortunately all we have for today. If you want to have the webinar links and so on, please use the following email: connect@regent.ac.za for any further information. Thank you very much. Have fun for the rest of the day, and thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for Kyle and Dr. Asvat for their wonderful contributions. Thanks everyone. Have a good one.